Slides are not moving. This is so, okay, now they did. Cool. Okay, so in this super nice slide, we get a general sense of what Hasura does, okay? So we got the data sources on the left-hand side. We get a GraphQL API on the right side, that is the outputs. And all that is in this pink box in the middle, this is what Hasura does, okay? It plenty of things that you probably are aware of. But the fun thing is that it does all this magic without touching your data sources. We don't modify your databases. We don't write data on your databases, on your data sources. And to do that, well, we use metadata. So what is metadata? Hasura metadata. Hasura metadata are used by the GraphQL engine to define your exposed GraphQL API. And basically, they contain all the information that are relative to your GraphQL API. So being track database, track tables, permission, relationship, actions, remote schema, wherever the definition for it lives in the metadata, okay? And the big next question is, why should I care? Well, you should, because the metadata is what allows you to productionalize your project, okay? It's what allows you to go from local to production, what allows you to replicate an instance of Hasura with a comment, and they make Hasura super reliable and super easy to use. So to interact with the Hasura metadata, we have three main ways. Okay, the first one is the Metadata API, and that's a link for the doc reference to it. But then you get two tools to interact with this API in a super lean and super easy way, which are the Hasura console and the Hasura CLI, okay? So I expect that most people that interact with the Hasura metadata, they do actually use the console and the CLI. And so for today, what we will learn is basically how to configure your Hasura instance locally, then how to export your metadata, and then how to apply those metadata to a remote Hasura cloud instance, okay? So basically going, as we mentioned in the beginning, from local to production. So long story short, let me close this up and go on the code part, okay? So nothing fancy, I just created a very small project here. We have a super lean Docker Compose file where I just will spawn a Postgres database and a GraphQL engine with the new version, the 2.6.0, which contains the GraphQL joins. So let me get that up. Okay, so now Hasura is running. And what I can do is go back here, refresh the console, and here I have the console, okay? And I had a super simple database, just a couple of tables. So let me track one of them. I've tracked the user table, nothing too fancy, ED, email, team ID. I get the user now in my queries, so I can query this data. But if I go back now to the project, what I can see is that, well, the metadata did not change. So if I do just a git status, I don't get any change here. Because what happens is when you work with the, let's say the default console, the console that is served directly by the GraphQL engine, you don't get any sort of watcher that keeps your metadata in sync. So what you can do is by using the Hasura CLI, you can just Hasura metadata export. Okay. Oh, sorry, wrong folder there. No worries. Okay, cool. And now I see that my metadata got updated, and now I can, yeah, I see that I have a new file that tracks this public user table and a general table that imports that. Okay, so this is one pattern that I can use by working with metadata. But another thing I can do is use the console with the so-called CLI mode. So if I tap in Hasura console, I'm gonna get another version of the console open. The UI doesn't change, but what this version does is that it has a watcher that keeps track of what happens on my metadata. So if I go back on my database and I track the team table, going back here, I see that this was already updated, and I can see that I get the team table tracked. Okay. So let me go back here and let me untrack the team table. Okay. So modify tab, untrack. So the team table is no longer tracked. And if I go back here, I see that the table, the YAML file is no longer included, even though the file was not deleted. So that you folks, you want to re-enable that at a later point in time, you don't lose any of your configuration. But what I can do now, well, let me kill this console. I could at the same time do something. No, that was not what I intended to do. Can just copy and go. Okay, so I basically replicated the same thing that the CLI was exporting. And now by using the apply commands, I'm gonna apply the metadata that I modified by hand on my Hasura instance. So if I go back here and wait a second for the refresh, here it is. The team table is now getting tracked. Okay, so these were like super basic interaction with the metadata, how to keep track of them, how to add them to a project and track them using Git. Because of course, what we should do and what I will do is definitely add them all to a commit. Okay, yeah, nothing too fancy. Okay, so we committed that. Good. Another thing that we could do with metadata is, well, announce what our database is already able to do. Because as you can see here, we have this team ID, which sounds something like a foreign key, but this was not set as a foreign key by the person who created this table. Okay, but this is not a limitation for Hasura, because if we go in our relationship tab, we can configure this relationship ourselves. So this is an object relationship. We're gonna call it the team relationship. And we're gonna track the team table, and we're gonna use the team ID to track the ID field on the team table. So if I save this, ooh, failed to fetch. Oh, is the instance that? Oh no, sorry, wrong version of the console. Yeah, my bad. Sorry, folks. So this was team public team ID. Okay, so now I create this relationship. This relationship gets tracked in the metadata. So if I go here and I just drop our usual console metadata expert, we're gonna see that in this YAML file that was tracking the user table, we got a new item. So these object relationships that tracks and describes these relationships. Okay, and well, as you can see, I can now use that team and inspect the team as well. Okay. And then we get this very interesting data about the fake users and their fake teams. Okay, and so yes, we just announced the data that we had using the superpowers that Hasura gives us. What we can do now is like reason about how we can productionalize these changes that we made. So I created a project. This is a free project on Cloud Hasura. Okay, we got the same database. You see that there's nothing tracked here. There are no data observed. So what is the best way of going in production with this? I could use the CLI, okay? But I would suggest that for Hasura Cloud, the best way of going in production with the metadata is using our awesome integration with GitHub that can be set up very quickly from the setting of the project. You go to Git deploy. You just had, oh, let me get Jesse's face out of the way. I set up this repo before, just main branch, the directory is Hasura. Bang, this was set up. So now every time I do a commit, if there are changes in my metadata, those are gonna get applied directly by this integration without me having to do anything. So I can just push the changes that we already committed before, and those are gonna get applied. In the meantime, let's commit this new one. So let's say that we added team relationship. Okay, I'm seeing those as well. So we're gonna see that, okay, as you can see, the system already picked up both my comments, and they're gonna apply that. So you can also follow the progress here, and you see the metadata gets fetched and applied. So what we'll see is that all the settings that I've done in my local environment will go in production in a completely effortless way. This also allows for very beneficial patterns. Like I want to do a pull request and ask my fellow developers to do a review. So I change the permission, and one peer can say, "Look, these permissions are too wide, or you should restrict that or change that other thing." You can check that out, and you can verify together with your team the changes that you made to the metadata, which are basically the changes that you made to your Hasura instance in a super easy way. Okay, so my metadata got applied. We're gonna wait for all the rest of the check. We don't have any migrations here, so they should be super quick. Give it just a second more. Okay, yes, this is working. Good. And okay, so let me refresh this. Let's see if we're okay. Yes, this got picked up. So as you can see, so this was my original local project, localhost. This was my cloud project. Nothing was tracked here. Okay, now I get both the team and the user tables that are tracked, and inside the user table, in a few seconds more, we're gonna see also that the team relationship that we committed in a second commit will get picked up and enabled. Okay, and again, all the configuration that we put in the relationship stuff will be replicated here as well. Let me check if this is picking up. Yeah, it's currently working. Okay, yeah, it's still fetching, but yeah, so we can wait a second for it, but yeah, that was basically the main gist of it. Okay, so just as a final wrap up, metadata, they're the settings of your Hasura instance, and you can interact with them through the console or the CLI and apply them on Hasura Cloud very quickly with our awesome GitHub integration. And yeah, it's taking slightly longer, but yeah, no worries. I think we're fine here. So I'll stop sharing. And yeah, back to you, Jesse.
All right. I mean, like, I love that flow, and I use that flow for so many projects. It's really, really a huge time saver. And what's really, I mean, I still hold that understanding metadata deeply is going to be the key to unlocking really a lot of just magical experiences working with Hasura, because it just allows you to roll back. It allows you to be able to see where things went off the charts or off the rails. You know, it's an opportunity to really be able to check and have other additional insight. And it's the talk today, and I really appreciate your time on that, Alberto, is a great segue to the next presentation we have, because now we've actually pushed our YAML generator for GitHub Actions actually now out of demo, and now it's in production as well. And we're going to have a look at how you could actually use essentially some of this same workflow to be able to get preview apps or preview instances or ephemeral instances of Hasura. And so I'm going to bring Rishi on now to be able to give us a demo of how the YAML generator works for Hasura. Rishi, you there?
Hey. Yes. I'll share my
Awesome.
screen. Let me know if it works. Yeah. Okay, that was actually a great segue into my demo. Thank you so much, Alberto, for the demo. Okay, so as Alberto showed, did I refresh by mistake? Okay, no, sorry. Yeah. So as Alberto showed, there is this Git indication which allows you to connect a GitHub branch to a Hasura Cloud project, and then metadata migration from that branch can be automatically deployed to a Hasura Cloud project, right? After we launched this feature, it was like very well adopted by our customers and by a lot of users. And one more feature request that we kept getting was folks want previews of their branches, previews of the metadata and migration in their branches. So we have built out something cool, something very cool, and it is slightly DIY right now, and we are working towards a more native experience. But this is pretty cool too. So if you go to the Git deployment section of your Hasura Cloud project and click here, that will take you to a YAML generator where you can write your repo name, something. So this will what this does is this just helps you build up a workflow that you can add to your GitHub CI, and whenever there is a pull request, you can have preview instances for your collaborators to review the metadata migrations effortlessly, more efficiently, right? So yeah, you could just have your repo name here, demo, and the path to the Hasura directory, that is the path to the metadata and migrations within your repo. The region that you want the preview projects to be deployed in, you could choose any of the regions that are supported on Hasura Cloud. Also, the environment variables that you want to expose to the created preview instances, something like auth hook could be something, auth.com. I'm just going to write something, or GraphQL JWT secret. Yeah, you can add a secret here. I'm not going to add because I don't have a secret right now. And then you can have a comment which will get commented automatically once the preview app deployment goes through. And that's pretty much it. And we also have a nifty tool called ephemeral databases that comes along with this workflow. What you can do is you can set up a Postgres server to this workflow. You can set up the database URL of a Postgres server in your GitHub secrets and have a reference to that secret and pass the reference to that GitHub secret to this workflow. That is something like this. Database URL And then then environment variables that are referenced by a metadata in your data sources, like something like PG database URL, something like that. Right? And then you can just generate the YAML. This YAML gets generated. You can just take this and copy it your workflows, go to like wherever your repo is, you can create a workflow. I already have one here. So just if you see it, just a similar kind of YAML that I'm using with my personal configuration, right? And then once that is created, if you have pull request with metadata and with changes and migrations, here I have just added a very insignificant change, just changing name of the relationship from author to article author. If a pull request gets opened, uh, a job will run which will deploy the metadata and migrations, and eventually comment the link to the console and link to the GraphQL endpoint. That's about it, I guess. That's how the preview app flow works. Yeah, happy to answer questions at the end.
Thanks for that intro. Yeah, as the user mentioned inside of chat, this is what I need. So when you are able to have those kind of preview apps and be able to, because it's not just about testing the API, front to back. It's also a lot of times about testing it out for a new feature for some kind of UI or some kind of full picture you're trying to support or be able to account for. And that's exactly what this functionality is intended to solve. And so definitely test it out. And
yes, one more thing.
Yeah.
But this is by the way, just not for pull request. You can also use this for previews of any sort of branches. Like if you have a release branch and if you want to have a pre-release branch to have preview of what's going to go into a release, you can use the system for that as well. The APIs are documented in our docs, and you can totally check that out.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's exactly the flow that people get used to, or that's what creates a good developer experience, being able to have that sort of ability and sort of these ephemeral versions of the production environment to be able to test out. So super excited about that, and test it out. Let us know. I mean, I love YAML, but everyone's got a different spec. So it's nice when you get some tooling to help you write that stuff out. All right.
Yes.
You may have seen so far, we've had a lot of talk about metadata, a lot of talk about even with Hasura Cloud, and in terms of how many projects, or how do you manage all of this? How do you connect the pieces from local to cloud? Well, if you are also like me and you've got lots and lots and lots of cloud projects stacking up now, we actually have a whole bunch of new features and functionalities that are going to help make working with these a little bit easier, including one feature I think everybody's going to really, really love. But to do that, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Vaishnavi to show us these new functionalities for the Hasura Cloud dashboard. And I think you're going to really like what you see here. So Vaish, it's up to you.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right. Hey there, folks. Like how Rishi mentioned, so we've had a exciting couple of months recently with a lot of new features coming out on Hasura Cloud. So you've seen the GitHub integration, you've seen the preview apps, you're going to see the Vercel that Ojas is going to present right after. A couple of updates that we did on the cloud dashboard, actually a lot of these have come from user feedback, and we're always super excited to get all of these in to make the user experience that much more better. So the first one that I'm going to mention has been really requested, and this is super exciting. So this is essentially console environment variable labels, right? So I'm going to quickly show where you can find this. So what this means is a lot of users have requested, some sort of a differentiation between how the console looks between the different kinds of projects. So if you're on your dev, staging, or production projects, you do not really want any unintended changes to your production project, right? So now what you can do is you can, directly go ahead to your settings page of your cloud project, and this over here you can set any string that you want to display on your console as a banner, right? So what this means is now if I go to the console, this will essentially turn up as a banner on top, right? So you'll be easily able to differentiate between your dev staging and production projects. So this has been widely requested in order to make sure that no unintended edits or changes happens to your production environment. And so this is something that has come from the users as well, right? So up next, what we have is a project page search and pagination. So like Jesse mentioned, if you have like millions and millions of Hasura Cloud projects in your project's dashboard, now we right now have project search through the project name and as well as pagination that you can easily go through all of your projects around here. And up next, so in our environment variables page, so we've improved the user experience a little bit more. So now you'll be able to easily identify what each of these environment variables are, which of these are handled by Hasura Cloud, and which of these you can set, right? So you'll also be able to see which of these environment variables that you've already set, so that things are a little more intuitive and easier on that front. This is another thing we've spoken about earlier, and I would want all of you to try it out. So this is our Hasura API Explorer as an unauthenticated access. So if you go to any of your projects currently, so what this does is you'll be able to share your Hasura Cloud project as an unauthenticated access role, right? So once you do this, you should be able to set up an anonymous role for exploring your GraphQL API and your project. So this by default, if an admin secret is set for your project, it will not let anybody else go through an admin access. So you'll be able to try out like a whole bunch of features around here, make changes and share it with others on your team to test it out as an unauthenticated access. And another cool thing about this is you'll also be able to use any other public GraphQL API, and you'll be able to connect different kinds of endpoints and also try it out through this graphical interface. And one last thing, so we are always improving our GitHub integration experience. So a couple of things that we've heard from users is that this is a feature that we use on a daily basis, like 200, 300 times a day. And what this means is that every time you have like a commit on your repo, that'll give you either a success or a failure notification. So it is that much more easier if you have control over what kinds of notifications you want to receive. So this is one additional, user experience feature that we've enabled. So you'll be able to go and define whether you want to receive only success or failure or both or none, essentially. So it's about that. And so with this, I'm going to close by saying that please keep the feedback coming. So we're always like super excited to make the user experience that much more seamless and smooth as possible on Hasura Cloud. So yes, thank you for all of these feedback. With that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jesse.
Right. And I actually learned, I didn't know that we could change the endpoint. so that's cool. I even learned something on that today. That's great. No, I mean, these updates, and today there are a bit more cloud heavy updates. And that's sometimes just the way that it works. But like the functionalities for being able to search, being able to just have those optimized experiences for configuring your application, and just removing more surface area where bugs are going to pop up and things are going to break or whatever else, is those little UX improvements really, really do help. So we appreciate all the work that the cloud team does. And I appreciate it because I think I throw half of the feedback at them. So appreciate you guys. Yeah, the next and final internal demo we have before we get to our community presentation today is we're going to have a look at another integration. And we have just like today published into production the final form of the Vercel integration. And if you're not familiar with Vercel, it is a massively popular deploy target for a lot of JavaScript applications in particular. They do other things as well, but it's something that we're pretty excited about to see. And so I'm going to bring on Ojas to be able to show us exactly how this tool works. And yeah, come on board and show us this new functionality.
Yeah, hey Jesse, I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Perfect.
Hey, thanks for the introduction and thanks for letting the users know like what Vercel is and stuff. So let me quickly get on this and show you guys what we have been working on this awesome new integration between Hasura and Vercel. Let me just share my screen real quick. I hope you can see it.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So yeah, to start with, say I have a few projects on my Hasura Cloud dashboard already set up, well set up by one of the features Alberto mentioned is GitHub deployment. I have a buckets demo projects here, which I have already set up my metadata and migrations for. And also I have some Vercel front-end projects set up on Vercel dashboard. Created in different kinds of frameworks because that's what Vercel offers. What this integration enables users is to connect these two projects and create a seamless experience for full stack production development. Let me just show you real quick how this works and I'll explain you along the way. So the integration starts with the official Hasura integration in the Vercel marketplace. I click on add integration and this ask me for what account I want to set this up. Let me set this up for my personal account. This also can be set up for a team account, which also is a feature on Vercel that helps users build this integration in teams. For now, let's go ahead with personal account. And now let me select the particular Vercel projects that I need to integrate. So for specific projects, I have a bunch of few projects here. Out of which, let me select a few. Let's just say one for buckets and another one Next.js full stack app, and click on further add integration. What this does, this authenticates the user and brings the user to the Hasura side of things, where we fetch all of your Vercel projects and enable the users to basically individually select what all Hasura cloud projects you wanna integrate to what all Vercel projects. I selected two projects, buckets and Next.js full stack app. For that, I'll individually select two Hasura cloud projects. Here, users also have another functionality to either create a new project or either integrate any of the existing projects on the cloud dashboard. For buckets, let me just integrate this with the buckets demo. And for the sake of it, let me just create a new project for the another integration and let it go ahead. So that was it. Now we have both of the Hasura cloud projects connected to both of the Vercel front-end projects. The process is complete and it redirects back to Vercel. This integration is now complete. As a proof of context, let me show you what this integration did. Let me go to the Vercel buckets, settings, environment variables. So what this integration did is set up all these three particular environment variables for your Vercel projects, namely a project GraphQL endpoint, which you find in the project settings. This is the GraphQL API endpoint of the project, which helps you make GraphQL queries seamlessly through frontend. Another thing is another environment variable here set is the same, basically the same, but this also gets exported on the Next public for the applications which are created in Next on the client side, so that you can just directly use this environment variable in your code base. I'll show you a demo in a while. The third and the last environment variable is the admin secret, which enables you to make admin level queries on your console. So what it did is it set up all the environment variables. Now, what users might need to do is just trigger a redeployment for all the projects this integration is being enabled for. And this is one drawback that Vercel has to cover on. But if I go to my buckets project, let me go to deployments and let me redeploy this. Okay, I do not want to build with existing cache and basically redeploy. So what we'll do is after redeployment, this will consider all the environment variables set for it, and I can directly use them in the code base. Jumping into code, for example, this is the buckets front-end code that was set up on Vercel, and something like in the code, I can directly use process.env.next public Hasura project endpoint, which was automatically set by Hasura on Vercel side, and Vercel enabled it for their users to do this functionality in their local development. Let's check on the status. So this integration basically, okay, we'll have to wait for the deployment to go ahead and just apart from that, on the projects dashboard, just you can see what all Vercel projects were connected to your front-end projects. You'll see a Vercel tag on Hasura Cloud dashboard. This was the one Vercel project that was connected. The another one was buckets demo. There's no tag here basically because I'm not the owner of this project. The owner is someone else, and the owner can see, but it's basically the same, the Vercel tag to indicate what all projects have been connected. Okay, so this is redeployed. Let me go to the deployed app. So this is basically a simple bucket app to demonstrate what the functionality. What it does is it just lets you add an item or a bucket, and each time you add an item or a bucket, a GraphQL mutation/query gets fired, and through that project endpoint and environment variable that was set for you, and goes to Hasura, and Hasura handles those mutations and replies it. So if I just go here and try to add item 1, this gets added. There it goes. It fired a query, the item got added. This is basically shows us that the integration is working and these environment variables are automatically set. Said that, I hope this integration helps users to connect what the industry has to offer, one of the best front-end technologies to connect with what industry has to offer, one of the best back-end technologies. I hope this goes ahead well for a seamless full stack experience. With that said, this was pretty much it. Let us know if you have any feedbacks, improvements on this integration. We'll look into it. But over to you, Jesse.
Thanks so much. That was a great demo. It's really a lot of fun to see how that works together. And one thing that wasn't even necessarily shown in that part of it is that that's a GitHub integration as well too with the Vercel side. So you can have metadata in one folder, you can have the Vercel project in another folder, and you can be actually deploying both of these to 2 different cloud targets, all using CI/CD and being able to have branch previews and everything else that you would expect using these the YAML generated preview apps. So I mean the flow here is just so good, and we're really excited to see kind of how that all comes together. Definitely try it out, use it. I use it for a number of production use cases. So if it's something that you're wanting to know if it's stable, it works well, test it out and let us know what you guys think. That brings us to our final presentation for the evening, and I'm going to bring on Thomas Gerber, who's going to give us a look at building the open source version of Pharos CE. And I had a chance to talk with him previously about this project. It's actually super compelling. So I'm really excited to be able to let you all hear this story as well. And with that, wasting more time, I'm going to hand it over to Thomas.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, Jesse. By the way, big fan of Vercel here, and I'm curious how you got that Hasura hoodie. So, Jesse. Anyway, I'm gonna walk you through why the 2 big reasons why we chose Hasura and what it does for us. To set the stage, as web app developers, it's very natural for us to instrument our application with Datadog, New Relic, Sumo, and all of those things, right, to understand what's happening in our app. What we aim to do at Pharos is the same, but for your engineering operations, because we want you to maybe figure out what is a bottleneck in your engineering operations. Where should you invest to produce more features and better features? And so Pharos is a connected engineering operations platform. And one of the reason I'm trying to build why Hasura is so useful, like you may be familiar with DORA metrics. DORA stands for DevOps and Research and Assessment Group. It's a team at Google that try to figure out what should you measure about your engineering organization. And they came up with those 4 metrics that are a good indicator of whether or not your organization is healthy: deployment frequency, lead time for change failure rate, and time to restore service. And I'm just going to focus, just for this conceptual example, on lead time for change. Lead time for change is how fast does your code go from your machine to production. And that code could be the metadata that Alberto showed, right? And you want that as small as possible. But when you're tasked to track, if your manager asks you, hey, can you measure that for me? Well, it's super hard, because essentially you need that commit morphs into several things. It morphs into an artifact, and then that artifact is deployed on various environments. And so you realize that measuring those things is super hard. And that's what we try to solve at Feros. And so we modeled engineering operations in a schema. So we have a connected schema that defines pull requests, deployments, builds, artifacts, tasks, and how those relate, right? And this is our superpower. Our superpower is defining this, modeling the world. And this is the first big thing Hasura did for us. Like, we could focus on our superpower, and Hasura automatically transformed that into APIs that are what the users use, right? And we didn't have to do anything. It was automatic. We just had to put Hasura in front, and magically it worked. And this really allowed us to focus our energy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give a few of those shout outs here. On our community edition, we try to do the same for all areas where that is not, where we bring our core value. So for example, we use Airbyte for ELT, we use Metabase for the BI layer, dbt for transform, and obviously Hasura as the main API gateway on top of our schema. Everything revolves around our schema. And so I'm quickly going to show you what it looks like. I deployed a local instance of Feros CE. I have Airbyte, for those who know. So I give a GitHub token, connected a repo, synchronized data, pretty cool, pretty straightforward. It actually sends data to the Hasura endpoint, right? It knows our Feros destination that is responsible for bringing the data in after it has been extracted, writes to a Hasura endpoint. And after I have it in, I can go see those metrics that are built. And so, I can now see where my different things and my commits, where do they spend most time, and maybe do something about it. And I can look, this is Metabase, I can change, like it's very flexible by design. And obviously I have this GraphQL endpoint, right? So now I can just, like, for example, figure out my list of reviewers for every pull request, right? This just works. And an example of usage, we package N8N, for those who are familiar, it's an automation tool. An example of usage, I could, on a schedule, I could do a GraphQL query to see what are the pull requests that are open that don't have a review. This is now easy with GraphQL, right? And I can just send them to Slack and say, okay, this is the number of PR waiting for validation. So let me just execute this. I send them to our community Slack here. All right, just now, 9:55. There are 2 PRs. So concretely, what does it mean? Like, if you look at the code base, this is an open source repo, shared the link earlier. There's not much in it, right? There is an important piece, which is the canonical schemas that I described, where we model the world. This is our superpower, right? But that's pretty much it, because all those other products are doing the heavy lifting. So for example, we have Docker Compose that package everything, including Hasura. Very straightforward. We just need to tell Hasura where the database is. By the way, a quick shout out to our friends at Plural. We use plural.sh for cloud deployments because we needed easy way to deploy Airbyte, Hasura, Metabase. So for any managed Kubernetes cluster, really Plural helped us a lot to make it simple. And in the repo, then we have a few other things that are being initialized. So for example, in Metabase, we have canned dashboards that are automatically added the first time you start. In Airbyte, we have preset configuration, preset connections to some data sources. And Hasura, what we do there during initialization is pretty straightforward. We just call the API to track all the tables and the relationships that we have defined, so that the first time you start up, you immediately see all of this. You have nothing to do as a user. And the second thing that we do is we restified a few endpoints. It was also very important for us. We have a lot of tools that we've built before we moved to GraphQL and Hasura that were REST-based. For example, the data that you saw here that I was demonstrating, that's fake data. And so we had tools that knew how to feed data into Pharos, but that was REST-based. And so it was very convenient for us to just restify a few endpoints, and so that we can use the tool as is. So we didn't have to change anything. So we just, create a few restified endpoints. One last super cool thing that Hasura and GraphQL solved for us, we need to deal with out of order ingestion. Like, as I said, to get those metrics, to provide this engineering ops platform, we need to deal with other, we need to be able to grab data in any order from all the sources that contains what you want. And that was problematic because, if you have a Jira task that links to a pull request, and then you have the pull request in GitHub, like, how do you make sure that regardless of the order, it works? And this is where support for upsert through onConflict was so easy. As a matter of fact, our destination that writes the data that extracts into Pharos automatically adds an onConflict clause that will just put the constraint on the private key and update all the columns but the private key in case of conflict, which made it trivial. Like, essentially, we don't have to deal with orchestration. We can just not care in what order data is being ingested. Finally, so I covered the first value, which is like, for us, we focus on our superpower. But now, the second and probably even more important things that Hasura does for us, really, we package Hasura inside our product, right? And now the user has access to the full power of Hasura to build other things. This is why it's so great. So for example, a user, without having anything to do with us, can decide to augment our schema and add fields, table, relationships, like this, like essentially everything that was demoed today, or joins in the joins now, which is great. They can, we have some users that use actions to enrich the data that are being put into Pharos. They have some additional data somewhere, either in known systems or in homegrown systems, and they just use actions to enrich the data in Pharos. They can, with remote schemas, some of them are putting Pharos in a wider ecosystem of GraphQL APIs that they use internally, which is also very useful. My point is, like, Hasura and the other tools that we use really let the user build great thing on the platform without us being in the way. And this is a second big thing that second big reason why we're so happy with Hasura. I think we're at time, so I'm going to stop there. But yeah, take a look at our repo. Again, it's so compact now, thanks to Hasura and the other big projects that we use. And we're delighted to be here.
Yeah, really appreciate that. I do want to pull one nugget out from, because I know the story, but so you took out an accomplished data model. So you knew the data model already. You had a piece going into it, but how fast was it again? And what was the size of your team that you were able to make Pharos CE?
So yeah, we started Pharos Communication after we started our SaaS version, our cloud version. It took essentially a few weeks with a couple of engineers to wire everything together, which is pretty great. Fantastic. Like, you know.
That's really great. Yeah, and that's great. And we also really love seeing just that commitment to open source, because it's something that it's a big driver and something we believe in a lot here at Hasura. Really appreciate that. If there are questions for Thomas, please let him have it in the chat here, and he'll be able to answer those here in async. I'm going to just quickly sprint through our wrap up here, as we have just the last little bits to cover. So there's some quick community updates for everybody here. Essentially, we've got the Data and API show, as you may all be aware of. Last month, we did a whole series on the Hasura super app and a deep dive around architecting with actions inside of Hasura. That's something that we think is a really powerful primitive. So if you have questions about actions, definitely check out the history on that. Next month, we're going to be doing connecting schemas, databases, all about joins, generally speaking. And we're going to do a lot of in-depth content around that. We're going to be having our conference coming up end of June. We still have room for CFPs. So that window is closing down rapidly, but we would love to hear the stories you have about building with Hasura. So please submit a CFP and definitely sign up, because we would love to have everybody there as we celebrate building with Hasura. And our next community call, end of May, May 26th. Our topic will be all about authentication authorization. So that'll be a lot of fun to have a look at that as well. And with that, I want to just invite everybody to join us on Discord throughout the week and throughout, just as you build with Hasura. It's a great place to talk to other users, great place to see the community team, as well as a lot of our engineers hang out there as well. It's a great place to find out what's happening. And yeah, if you have any feedback about today, let us know. We have a couple of links set up there for you to give some feedback if you've got concerns or comments. Would love to hear that as well, because this is your hour. We love to hear your stories. And if you've got something you'd like to share as a community contributor, definitely let us know. We're always looking for great stories to surface. With that being said, big thank you to all our presenters today. We are now 3 minutes over, and I'm going to say thank you, everybody. We will see you all around the community, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.